thank you, Katie. Thank you for inviting me. It's good to see you and it's good to be here. Father Nicholas asked if I could lead everyone to begin the event in singing Christ is Risen. I don't know if we can pull that off on Zoom, but we'll try. And I don't have a good English translation with me, so we'll try it in Greek. Christos anesti ek nekron thanaton patitsas ketisen tis nimasi zoin Charisamenos. Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death, and upon those in the tombs bestowing life. Truly the Lord has risen. Good evening, everyone. So thank you for coming to the FOrCE webinar tonight. And to hear my presentation, I'll be doing screen sharing in a moment. I will share the funny fact of life in the algorithm. Not yet perhaps the full AI, but we're getting there. That from the moment that the FOrCE webinar was, I shared it to my Facebook page. Now, every time I go on social media, they're showing me clips from the Star Wars movies. Behind the scenes in the making of Star Wars. This would never happened before. So it is a good topic of the FOrCE. I want to say something else before I jump in. I'm speaking to you here from the Dean's office at Hellenic College in Brookline, Massachusetts, speaking to you live, of course, overlooking the beautiful city of Boston skyline below here as night has fallen. Behind me that way is our beautiful chapel, and this has really been the joy of my life to be first a teacher and then a dean here at Hellenic College Holy Cross. It has just been a wonderful sojourn on what it really is sacred ground, and very much vividly so. And now, as a very wise man, Metropolitan John Palucci of FOrCE, who was my classmate actually at seminary, one of my best friends, he said that the spiritual life takes us to a borderland, and a border between heaven and earth, but that just like between earthly nations, the border is the most dangerous place. Later on, I remember once he had graduated, he'd become up first a priest and then later a bishop. I remember saying to him once, Your Eminence, I want to become a truly good person. And he said, Tim, to become truly good, you must become deep. And to become deep, he said, many times takes a kind of crisis. And he had a big influence on me, as did many other people. You can see behind me, there's an icon of Saint Sophrony, whom I had the joy to meet when I was just 22 years old. And that really what I was trying to get at with all of that is to say that I think long-term, the audience for this recording, once it becomes, a recording, is going to be primarily high school volunteers at the very beautiful Project Mexico program. And so many of our students have gone through Project Mexico, or PM as they call it. So many of our graduates have gone there to serve. And in 1993, I myself was on one of the early teams organized by then Ted Barbas, now Father Theodore Barbas, here of the Boston metropolis. That was a beautiful experience and a life-changing experience for me as well. And I want to speak in such a way that whether or not there are many high school students present with us tonight, that going forward, once they hear this, they'll find it, of value to them. So let me go ahead and do a share screen here with, see if I can make that happen. For some reason, this time it didn't happen in in the maybe because I'm highlighted, it's not letting me see the full panoply of options on Zoom to do a share screen. It's only letting me see my two pictures. Maybe Katie, you can unhighlight me for a second.
Sure.
Let's see if that helps. Okay. Go back to Zoom. Okay, yeah, so there it is. The normal Zoom that I'm used to. Okay. So now I think perhaps you all can see the let's see here, make sure that stays closed. Are you seeing now just my slideshow? And maybe my picture? Okay, that's good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Looks great.
So, like other speakers in this wonderful series, the FOrCE webinar series, I want to try to talk for a few minutes in a sort of a more vein of spiritual life, and then for 15 minutes, talk about Hellenic College more specifically. Of course, I could also talk about Holy Cross because I'm a professor at Holy Cross, but I'm the dean at Hellenic, and that's really been the last 3 years, the lion's share of my efforts. My own book that Shane mentioned in the intro is called The Ethics of Beauty. And in it, I tried to present the Orthodox ethos for our modern times and for our particular age. And I coined a nice marketing slogan that I like very much, beauty first. And it's not that I'm inventing something new about the faith, but rather just trying to express it in contemporary terms. And I want to talk tonight about beauty first in education and in the Christian life. And in connection with this, what Hellenic College offers, how it can help us to unite the mind of education with the heart of the spiritual life through the experience here on a campus like this one. Before I change the slide, I don't want to miss the chance to point out that beautiful photograph on this slide. That's the Library of Congress, one of the great public spaces in the country. And by law, every book published in the United States, the publisher has to send 2 copies to the Library of Congress. And I certainly sent my 2 copies when I wrote my book. I was proud to do so. And I wrote much of my own dissertation, not in that room exactly, but in a related room. Let's see if I can get, okay, so that's my second slide here. So here I mentioned this theme of beauty first as being essential to the Orthodox ethos and giving a certain kind of primacy to beauty. And we're going to explain as the talk goes on what that means. Whereas many people are shy about beauty. We can think about the 3 Socratic transcendentals. So Socrates talked about the source of all being as the one. But he said there were three particular names for the one that were above all the other names that kind of express the inner core. So we had a kind of trinitary, the one, and then these 3 transcendentals. The 3 transcendentals were the true, the good, and the beautiful. And if you think about our modern life, one of the things that characterizes it is that we have plenty of reverence for the truth. We want to know facts. We want more knowledge. We very much think that knowledge will save us. We spend endless sums on education to make people masters of knowledge. We spend endless sums on research to expand the realm of what we know. And so in many ways, the Socratic transcendental called the true is handled by science. Similarly, we do have a great respect for the good, for utility, for effectiveness, for making an impact, for efficiency. And once again, we spend a lot of money in education so people can be more effective. And we spend a lot of research dollars on technology, which is this kind of the effectiveness, the goodness of science is proved in the technological applications. the true expressed in the good. Besides technology, we also talk a lot about policy. Maybe it's public policy, maybe it's a policy you're debating in your parish, maybe you're debating in your high school what to do. So as modern people, we talk a lot about the true and the good, but using the names science and technology, or science and policy, science and tactics, strategies for being effective. There's a great emphasis on efficiency and utility, showing that we're good for something. What about the beautiful? How often do we sit and just share what we find beautiful and talk about that? How often do we propose an idea just because it's beautiful? How often do we propose an action for beauty's sake? And for this slide, I wanted to share this photograph of, it's actually Greece from space, because it suggests certainly science. They're doing science in these space missions, technology, the amazing and wonderful technology we've developed to make that possible. But also you see a profound beauty there, the beauty of the earth that God made. And in the origins of science, so when science was really getting going, let's say from the 1400s, but much more 1500s and then 1600s and 1700s, scientists were very much originally inspired by beauty. And they saw in the beauty of the world the proof that the world was ordered, and therefore it would make sense to investigate the world, because you were going to come with some good results. God made an ordered world. In many senses, science is a Christian thing because it presupposed a lawgiver, a creator, a God who made an orderly and predictable universe. And the proof of that order was its beauty and its harmony. Nevertheless, something has happened over the centuries, maybe since the end of the 1700s, where we have gotten more and more afraid of the beautiful. We have increasingly thought that concern for the beautiful will make us inefficient, or make us weak, or will make us irrelevant. And you see, when schools have a funding crisis, the first thing they want to do is cut education in the arts. Oh, what's the purpose of beauty? Everybody needs a job. So that's just one small example of how our society can't talk about the beautiful in an intelligent way anymore. It has this kind of phobia of it. People are afraid that beauty is irrational. And that's one reason. We've got to be scientific, we've got to be reasonable and logical, and people think that beauty is irrational. It is, but it isn't. People are afraid of beauty because they think it's a divisive topic. After all, everyone has their own opinion, and it's a mere opinion. So how can we even discuss what's beautiful? We'll just start to disagree. Or people think that beauty is too emotional, that it will cloud our judgment. Will beauty weaken our will to make the hard choices that scientific progress demands? We are afraid of beauty because it can inspire pity. Beauty can slow the drive for efficiency and progress, even when it destroys everything. And the 20th century was full of many examples like this, where great reformers tried to quiet a love for the beautiful to inspire people to, apparently achieve some great good, and the result was disaster. The picture I have on this page is a book called Mountains Beyond Mountains. The author is Tracy Kidder. He's a Pulitzer Prize-winning author, as the cover shows you, and he is a really, really good author, and that is a really, really fun book to read. At one time in the early 21st century, this book, Mountains Beyond Mountains, was the most assigned book in American higher education at the undergraduate level. And there's a good reason for that. And I recommend to you young people watching this to buy this book and work your way through it. The man on the cover of the book, the man with the stethoscope around his neck, he's a fellow named Paul Farmer. I had the fortunate blessing to meet him twice here in Boston because he lived and worked in Boston. The book is about him and his friends and their quest to cure the world, as the book says. And Paul Farmer, he says some very beautiful things there about beauty and about pity in particular. He says, without pity, we can't make any progress in our social problems. Without this concern for what is weak, love for cultures, love for individual persons, we can only become a wrecking ball in the world. So I very much ask you to read this book, not only because it will help you, but because I met Paul Farmer twice. He was a beautiful man. And sadly, last year in February of 2022, at the age of 65, he died unexpectedly in his sleep. But he spent 40 years of his life from age 25 to 65 doing nothing but traveling to the poorest parts of the world and building clinics and hospitals. So he was just a fantastic person. I can't really say more about him now. But this notion of pity, here's our dear Gandalf, the photo on the right. And we know this famous line from the Fellowship of the Ring, which also made it into the movie in part. Frodo is so angry at Gollum, and Gollum following them and causing trouble for them. And he says, what a pity that Bilbo did not stab that vile creature when he had a chance. Was, a more efficient quest to destroy the ring if they could only get rid of Gollum. Of course, we know that Gollum has a big role to play still. But what does the wise Gandalf say about pity? He says, pity, it was pity that stayed his hand. In other words, that stopped him. Pity and mercy, not to strike without need. And he has been well rewarded, Frodo. Be sure that he took so little hurt from the evil, that Bilbo took so little hurt from the evil and escaped in the end because he began his ownership of the ring so, with pity. So one of the reasons I have to warn you that our society fears the beautiful is because they fear that it will inspire tenderness, mercy, pity, mildness, that it will slow people down from this crushing inhuman desire for efficiency and progress. It's just, it can just get out of hand when pity and the beautiful don't reign supreme. So if the wider world that we live in doesn't know what to do with beauty, what I argue in my book, and I'm pretty sure I'm right here, is that for the Orthodox Church, not only do we talk about beauty and have a prominent place for beauty, but we can even justify saying this slogan, beauty first. That in the relationship between the beautiful, the good, and the true, we want to begin with beauty. That, of course, that photograph, what you'll probably notice first is it's a big church of Hagia Sophia, the Holy Wisdom, meaning Christ. It's a church dedicated to Christ, who's the wisdom and power of God, according to St. Paul. And it's a beautiful, beautiful church, and hopefully someday you can visit there. I myself have been there probably more than 15 times, and every time it's a life-changing experience. It was built in the 500s AD, so it's very old, but it's stood the test of time with good construction. I will also point out to you, there's a church just beyond it in the photo. That's the Church of St. Irene. And believe it or not, the Second Ecumenical Council was held in that church in 381 AD. So where we first recited the creed in the form that we have it. So that's a beautiful photo. And probably some of you know a famous story of how the emissaries of Vladimir of Kiev were looking and scouring the world for the true religion. And they tested many religions. Finally, they came to Hagia Sophia and the services. This is in the the 10th century, I guess. So 500 years after the church was built. And they said, we have never seen such beauty. We cannot forget that beauty. We did not know if we were in heaven or on earth. All we know for sure is that there God dwells with men. God dwells with humankind. And so they gave Saint Prince Vladimir the Orthodox faith, and they said, but now we're leaving, we're going back. We can't stay here anymore. Of course, shortly thereafter, by the way, a replica, a much smaller replica of Saint Sophia was built in Kiev, and it's there to this day, I think. Just keeping an eye on the time. So this beauty first way in Orthodox, we follow it in our doctrine of creation, our doctrine of prayer, and in the way in general. For example, St. Dionysius the Areopagite. And here's a beautiful photo of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, taken by the wonderful Dr. Maria Curie, who lives in Taiba, Palestine. And we have this quote. St. Dionysius says, from the beauty of God, comes the existence of everything. For beauty is the cause of harmony or sympathy, of community, of pity, right? Beauty is the great creating cause which bestirs the world and holds all things in existence by the longing inside them to have beauty. And there it is ahead of all as goal, as the beloved, as the cause toward which all things move, since it is the longing for beauty which actually brings them into being. So even in creation, St. Dionysius tells us it was beauty first. Beauty was so ravishing that non-being fell in love with God, the beauty of God, and left non-being behind and entered existence. In our prayer, we follow a beauty first way, where we place the mind in the heart and focus on the beautiful name of Christ. And we try simply to be stable in our focus on that beauty, not investigating thoughts in a logical, rational way, and not making lots of schemes of all the good things we're going to do, but stepping aside from efficiency and science and just taking that time every day to focus on the name of Christ. St. Porphyrios described the beauty first way and related to prayer. He said, you don't become holy by fighting evil, by being, struggling for the good. Let evil be. Look toward Christ and that will save you. What makes a person saintly is love. So in Orthodox, we have many opportunities to put aside for a few moments or a few hours even, this frantic attempt to know more or do more, and simply focus on the beauty of God. And that will save us. When we fall in love with the beautiful, that's called eros. When we practice the goodness of self-sacrifice and empathy or pity that is inspired when we fall in love, that's called agape. And when we sustain both of these kinds of loves through many trials, through storms, through times when there's no storm, everything seems boring and we want to give up for that reason, we become true, and this is philia. So that's the Orthodox Christian progression, is eros, agape, philia, or beauty, goodness, truth. And that is the healing way. Another name for this in our faith is the threefold path of purification, illumination, and deification. And you can see here, there's a wonderful, this is Dohiariu, the monastery that is the subject of a new documentary called Where Are You, Adam? You should go see it, because I helped advise on the subtitles. And I think they mentioned me at the end, so you should go see it. It's a good movie. But this is a monastery where they focus a lot on construction too, and you see they have a crane there. But purification, purify our love for the beautiful. Illumination, become illumined through good works and actions. If you're not sure what to do something good. If you're confused, make an act of alms giving, and that will help you see the path forward. And then deification. We receive deification by this stability. Deification at every stage, but deification is perfected in this stability. Now, I've said all this about the spiritual life, let's move a little bit more towards the intellectual life. There is a continuum of cognition, that we experience in life. And I was a student of the great Dr. Eric Pearl, and he taught us this. And this continuum of cognition, the ancient name for it was the trivium, the threefold path. See that it's the same thing, really. The first step of the trivium is grammar, an openness to beauty and pattern. The second step of the trivium is logic, exercise of analysis. And the third step is rhetoric, where we take the awareness of pattern and the awareness of the logic, in other words, of the whole and the parts, we put them back together in a greater whole, a social whole, a socially responsible whole. And that is the synod, or the community, and that's why it's called rhetoric, because we share it with others. At every stage of this trivium, we must learn to discern the deep reality of things, whether through purified feeling, that's grammar, through critical thinking, that's logic. And critical here doesn't mean you're criticizing, it means you're dissecting and you're making sure the arguments are sound. And then through the way of the deep, mature heart, and that's rhetoric. Not only to speak what's accurate or what's beautiful, but to do so in a mild way, a way that brings love. Look at that beautiful photograph. I took that photograph, can you imagine, on my father's island in Greece. I wanted to share with you a photograph of my mentor, the late Jane Jacobs. Oh, I forgot to write her name, but there's her beautiful photograph. Jane Jacobs. She wrote a book called The Death and Life of Great American Cities way back in 1961. And one of the things that she argued was that you cannot really understand something complex, something involving humans, something organic, something alive, if you don't first love it. And she was not a religious person. She was not a believer. And I met her and I knew her well the last 6 years of her life. In fact, I have my Jane Jacobs mug here. But she said, on scientific grounds, the more complex a system is, the more it will be the case that if you don't love it, you will not understand it. And again, it's beauty that helps us to spark the beginning of love into existence, not just seemingly pretend objectivity, which really many times is another word for cruelty and coldness. Recently, now we're talking about the intellect thing, because I know some of you are going to think about college, many of you. A new book came out in the last 10, 15 years, Ian McGilchrist, and it's called The Master and His Emissary. It's about the way our brains are asymmetrical. The right side of the brain is given to considerations of wholeness, and the left side of the brain knows the same things, does the same things, but with attention to the parts. And what McGilchrist tells us is that healthy thinking has this right brain, left brain, right brain progression. So certainly, in other words, what I want to reassure you as young people listening to this is that the trivium, which is centuries older than, it goes to 600-700 BC, older even the Babylonians had a sense of it, right? And it's a deep knowledge of the human race. The trivium, or the threefold path of orthodoxy, purification, illumination, deification, or this beauty, goodness, truth is my modern name for this thing. This is not only the tradition of the church, the tradition of the common human inheritance at its best, but it's also corroborated by the best in the science of the brain. And what McGilchrist says, and again, he's not a believer as far as I can tell, or maybe he is, but it's not a theological book. He says, our society is in danger because they're obsessed with truth only to the extent that it leads to goodness, that it leads to technology. We're dissecting everything and we can't put it back together. And that's a book. It's a little tough read, but it's good to have in your mind that the threefold way of orthodoxy is rooted in the best. logic. I conclude this first part of my presentation with this little beautiful icon of Christ. I don't remember where this is taken. My assistant, Mrs. Melissa McGinnis, put that in here today. But you can see that's a beautiful icon of Christ and many beautiful colors there. And this quote from St. Nikolai Velimirovich. I started my remarks tonight with a comment about St. Sophrony. He knew St. Nikolai Velimirovich personally. They were friends. And look at this beautiful prayer from St. Nikolai called King of Beauty. Out of burning love, O King of all beauty, thou didst leave the radiance of the beautiful cherubim. Thou didst descend into the cave of human life to despairing man with a torch and peace. How to contain thee? The earth became frightened. Welcome, O Christ, heaven bears thee up. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing on this one, and I'm going to share my my other little at the end show here. Minimize that. Come up here, and I think I have maybe another 10 minutes before we're going to get into the questions. I think there's a question in the chat bar. Oh, okay. We'll come to that beautiful question. Let's do the share screen on the second PowerPoint here. So I wanted to share this with you to give you kind of some sense about what goes on at Hellenic College in particular, by talking to you about our core curriculum. Certainly, Hellenic College is the undergraduate portion of the seminary. So the graduate portion is called Holy Cross, and the undergrad is Hellenic College. But there are many majors in Hellenic College. Here's a view from a crane or a drone taken out over our chapel looking in the city of Boston. In our core curriculum, we want people to be exposed to Orthodox Christianity and its beautiful patterns right away, and to delve into the Semitic, Roman, and Hellenic roots of Orthodox Christianity. Because Orthodoxy was an intersection with those three cultures and a negotiation between them that helped capture the fullness of the divine message. And those cultures are also at the root of the modern world in many ways, many different ways. And you will study all those cultures and Orthodoxy in our core curriculum. Before our core is over, you will be introduced to all our majors and all our professors, and you will have a robust liberal arts foundation. Liberal arts, the humanities, the study of beauty in many facets, and what that shows us about human nature, human possibilities, the structure and meaning of life. In our core, we utilize the city of Boston as a classroom every semester, so that we put you out in the city and you can make this city your own. But in the fourth semester, we give you the option of doing a semester abroad. And that also is, can be one of the best values, but it's not for everyone. I have this little slide here that I made. I took these beautiful photos. It's amazing what iPhones can do there. On the left is, each photo symbolizes one of the semesters. So here in the first semester of the core, you take a history course, The Ancient World to the Birth of Christ. It's a standard history. It's not like a religious history, but you take a theology course called Introduction to Orthodoxy. You learn an amazing amount of things. You take a classics course called The World of Greek Heroes. So you're exposed to these foundational texts, like the Iliad and the Odyssey and other great texts. And then this course with a check next to it is our City of Boston course that semester, the Great Concert Halls of Boston. So it's music history, but it puts you in the city. Of course, most schools will make you do a composition and style course. And then we have a 1.5 credit course, a slightly easier course called Executive Management and Research. And it helps you to develop your strategies for succeeding in college. In the second semester, you can continue your study of history. Now you do an Old and New Testament study in the light of the hymns of Christ and the scriptures, hymns of the church. The art history course is called the Museums of Boston, again, puts you out there. And our math course is mathematics for accounting and finance. So everyone gets that, and you continue with your literature course. In the very first summer, we require students to do an intensive but brief course in modern Greek. So they learn the alphabet and the basics of conversation, and they can choose later on what to do with that. In the sophomore year, we make the study of psychology more formal. Of course, in those 2 literature classes, you're not just learning to write, but you're also reading some great texts there too. The theology course there is called Doctrine and Devotion. It's the history of our devotion to the Mother of God. And that's a fantastic ability. Philosophy course from Socrates to Augustine, diachronic, literature of vocation. And our City of Boston course is called World Religions in Boston. In the 4th semester, you can go abroad to Athens, or you can remain here in Brookline, and you'll complete your study of history with the 3rd history course. We do a community engagement course, including we'll take a service trip and spring break together to Puerto Rico. And your science course is called the Natural World. And you see the other courses there. If you go to Greece, then your science course would be archaeology or environmental studies. The beauty of the core is that it plunges you into a life-changing experience of study in an Orthodox Christian community. You make the city of Boston your own. You become a citizen of the world. You prepare for a possible semester abroad. And you're introduced to the beauty of the human cultural inheritance and of nature. Meanwhile, because you're living in a seminary environment, you're immersed in a campus, following the full cycle of Orthodox services. And your mind and heart experience a unity there. You examine the roots of Orthodox Christian identity, faith, and practice. And you see the commonalities and differences between your faith and the great religious traditions of the world. By exposing you to the Semitic, Roman, and Hellenic roots of Orthodox Christian faith, you understand the deep culture of the ecumenical patriarchate, known as the first throne of Orthodoxy. So I know I'm going a little faster here. The core will give you the chance to work with and learn from excellent instructors and mentors who are PhD experts in their fields. So in every course you take, it's a full professor. You develop the intellectual tools needed for your major and your success in life. You learn to think, write, and speak analytically from within a broad context of world history, art, philosophy, theology, literature, and culture. And of course, you have this knowledge about orthodoxy. So really, for your formation as an individual, I recommend this core. These are the majors we have, everything from business management to classics, history, literature, psychology, religious studies. That's our theology major. And then we have these minors. In our core, you study a wide array of subjects, and therefore you can engage meaningfully with people from other fields and other majors. And you will understand yourself in a deeper way. You sample all the majors before you have to choose a major. That's the way we designed it. You can see on the right all the many things that you'll be studying, and not just studying at a high school level, but at a full college level. All these courses are designed for you to dive into important aspects of the common human tradition with highly dedicated faculty who want you to learn about both Orthodox identity and world cultures, and they want you to be successful in your studies. Orthodoxy and Hellenism, which is our 2 main foci, but we also have this on the Roman and the Semitic focus, but they are an ideal launch pad for intelligent engagement with the broader world. Hellenic College will help you realize your full potential and become a person who makes a confident impact. I truly believe that. It's a wonderful place. It's a small school. We only have room for about 100 undergraduates. Right? Many people, my high school class, my graduating class was 300 people. And here in all 4 years, we only have 100 students max. But it's a small school confiding millennia of human insight and discovery amidst the experience of God's love. I want to stop screen sharing there and see how we're doing on time. It's just about where I want it to be. These days, people are in a search not only for a career, because in the major you get your career, you get your vocation, but they want that broader exposure to the life of the mind, the liberal arts, in the sense of all the fund of human experience and knowledge. I took this slide out, but maybe someday I'll put it back in. Near Hellenic College, there's a Starbucks at Putterham Circle, and in the little strip mall there's also a flower shop, and they used to have many statues, little busts of the Buddha. And at first, I would go there 20 years ago, 18 years ago, when I started to teach here, and I thought, why are those idols? What's happening? And then I thought, why do they display their religion? Other people don't. And I had many such questions. It was only in 2019 that I learned the important fact. You see, when Alexander the Great conquered all the areas that are now Syria, Palestine, Iraq, Jordan, Persia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, parts of India, his descendants administered these areas. And these Greek-speaking people, many of them, they were very open-minded. This is 3 centuries before Christ. Some of them converted to Hinduism or Buddhism, many of them. And they didn't just convert, but they brought their own inheritance. So it was these Greek converts to Buddhism who made the first statues of the Buddha. Buddhism wouldn't have any of those statues if it hadn't been for its intersection with Hellenism. So whenever you see a statue of the Buddha anywhere in the world, now I served in South Korea for 6 months at the seminary there. I was teaching. All throughout the country, you have these Buddha statues, but that is directly traceable to the Greeks. And once you realize that, all of a sudden you realize how interconnected the human race is, and what a beautiful thing that is, that each group shares its insight or its knowledge. We influence each other, we learn from each other. Even the Dalai Lama, he said, we owe so much to the Greeks. We wouldn't have this beautiful thing without them. So, and I'm not just privileging the Greeks. I'm saying it's this, and somehow even before Christ came, the Greeks were starting to realize we should depict God in human form, and that it conveyed that to other parts of the world. It's a profound lesson. My point is, no matter how great your faith, you need your education, and you need to pursue that. And that's my message to young people today. So I'm 2 minutes over, and we want us to take questions. Katie, do you want to encourage people to, or should I just tell them? People, you can write your questions in the chat. Okay, here's the first one. What practical ways do you see the ethos of beauty being integrated into ministry at Project Mexico or otherwise? Well, I know that in any kind of ministry, we feel a tremendous pressure to show results. We feel a tremendous pressure to demonstrate to our donors that we're doing all kinds of things, good things with their money, and that's true. We can get very impatient with our coworkers or people who, have a bad day and we always have to remember in a beauty first approach, beauty in its most accessible location, the face of our neighbor, which is the image of God. The face of your neighbor is the icon of God. And that means always giving the benefit of the doubt, always being patient, and not treating people as if they were means to an end. And many times in social work outside the church, not always, not even most of the time, but sometimes, even the people we're helping can start to seem like a number. But every person that we're helping, we have to remember the way that they, just like us, are made in God's image. They have things to teach us. There's ways in which, they have virtues we don't have. And this is an important aspect to look for what's beautiful around us. Jane Jacobs, that beautiful woman I showed her photo there, the older woman in the blue dress, she said, the hardest place to start is where there's nothing. you have to first give gratitude for what's there. If you want to have any positive impact in a situation, first you have to make a list. You have to really work and see what is already working there, what is already to be grateful for. So that's a good principle for ministry, and that's a beauty first principle. Okay. Someone said, what makes the Hellenic College core unique? Okay, that's a good question. Well, what's happening now is students are becoming more and more anxious, high school students and college students and their parents. They feel the American dream is slipping away, and they're taking an anxiety to their college experience. And the anxiety is driving them to think solely in terms of what job can I get with what I study? How much money can I make? How likely am I to? Okay, yes. But remember the words of our Lord. God provides. Consider the lilies of the field. They neither toil nor spin, but Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like them. So we have to push away that anxiety and supplant it with a love for the beautiful. So we're one of the few colleges that still requires an entire semester of art history. How can you go through your life without having studied that? And I guarantee you, if you don't do it in college, you're never going to do it. We're even rarer in requiring an entire semester of music history. But what expresses the soul better than music? So how can you be a psychology major and skip over music history? How can you be a religion major? How can you be a leader and care for others, or a teacher? So you've got to understand music, and we have you're lucky with some beautiful teachers of music history over the years here. So that's another way in which, and I think a third way, and there's many ways. The third way is, that every semester you're actually in the city of Boston. You're going to meet all our professors, even people who are, some people who are in admin that we know are really great. We have them teach. We want you as a young person to meet a wide variety of successful and intelligent adults to help form your identity. Okay, here's another question. Where's the hardest place for you to find beauty? What tips do you have for those tough times? Well, when we're suffering, or we're going through a time, what is suffering, right? For at one age, suffering can be excommunication, to not have friends. But that's not suffering for us, because we have Uber Eats. We have YouTube. We don't care. Another age maybe thought suffering was pain. But unless we, are really sick, probably, we have some medicine or some care. But the suffering for an American in the 21st century is feeling like they're not having an impact, like they're not making a difference. And people suffer so much, and they say, oh, I should have made more money by now. I should have achieved this by now, or that thing. And that sense of being ineffective, because we're putting so much emphasis on the good and not enough on the beautiful. It really is hard for us to overcome that. A friend recently told me, she said, the way to overcome that is to give yourself completely to the liturgical cycle of the church. I remember even in before I had a real job after college, I couldn't find time to go to church. It's like I thought it was why? I wasn't doing anything. Give yourself to the daily liturgies. Okay, next question. How does the principle of beauty first intersect with the growth of AI? Well, AI, uses a kind of emergent or self-organizing principles that comes in the third kind of science, the science of organized complexity. And so what you're asking the computer program to do is to, voraciously, omnivorously observe and learn from that observation. So it's following a kind of beauty first principle. But it is clearly some kind of danger from the AI. And we are so concerned with the money to be made from it. We're so concerned with the defense applications that we're not, as a society, taking the time to think about the ethics, to think about what sort of a world do we want to live in. And I think as the AI grows and takes over certain tasks, it will be important for people to spend more time in the liberal arts, more time in theology, more time in prayer, more time in liturgy, to anchor themselves in these human fundamentals. And I think we can start that now, and leaving our cell phones, turning them off at night, or at least putting them on airplane mode and leaving them on the other side of the room. And there's these Faraday pouches, putting it in the pouch, letting the thing, give yourself some peace. Don't let yourself be totally tamed by that technology. Take the time to focus on God, the ultimate beauty. Do we have time for any more questions, Katie? So we'll take either one last question from the audience, or we'll just sort of putatively imagine future generations of high school kids watching this, and we'll come up with a question. When I was in high school, I was the same person I am now, but the only difference is that, with time, you acquire depth. And so I encourage you in high school to develop your relationship with Christ as strongly as you can, to practice from now, praying for your enemies. Practice now to have some self-awareness of your own faults and sins, and to ask forgiveness readily and easily. I encourage you from now to let yourself fall in love with God, fall in love with whatever career or topic is of interest to you, whatever adventure, and really go for it. And certainly within the beautiful, we find the good. Within the resurrection, we find the cross. So when you do fall in love, you will find that a price has to be paid. And I just want to give you the encouragement, it's worth it. And God will help you. If you follow your heart, God and other people will help you. So cleanse your heart as best you can, and go forward into your young life with confidence. You will make it. Thank you for listening tonight.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patitsas.
Thank you, Dr. Patitsas. That was just wonderful.
Dr. Patitsas, I have a question for you.
Oh, please.
Sorry, I know the time is running short, but you talk about moving from the mind to the heart, that transition. And I know I'm assuming that you're thinking it's through prayer. Can you be a little more specific on how to do that?
Well, in prayer or in other areas of life?
In prayer.
It seems to me that, over the last 2,000 years, the church has developed the services themselves to augment that. So the more time that we can spend in church, for many people, the cheapest return on your dollar religiously, like if you want to, boost your spiritual life, and you're looking just for a simple solution, every Sunday, provided you don't have kids or something, and that's another story, but every Sunday, be early for Orthros. Because that's probably the one day a week, one morning a week we go to church anyway. And go to that be there for that extra hour and a half. Go before the service starts, light your candle in peace, venerate the icons, and give your mind the time to finally calm down. Your mind over the course of those 3 hours will descend into your heart. But if if you're like me, many times I show up late. I'm late. My excuse is I'm the bachelor. Someone else's excuse is they have kids. But if you're in that issue where you can show up early, give yourself that extra time. Follow along. We have the digital chant stand technology on the phone. If that's I think that's a good technology, and you'll experience it in practice. That's not great. That's not maybe the best advice you were looking for, but it's okay advice.
Well, I think it's excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
So we're at 9. So do we wrap it up?
Yes. Thank you for joining us this evening. It was fantastic. For those of you who are late, we'll have the video available probably by Monday. It'll be on the Project Mexico website, and you can access it from there. And Dr. Patitsas, thank you again. That was excellent.
Thank you, and I hope that the pacing was good and everything, and it was understandable. Thank you so much for making me a guest, and God bless Project Mexico.
Thank you.